Is there a possibility in your mind that D-Hop, Fitz, and Kirk could all get 1,000 yards this year?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that's possible.
Kyler Murray, and you know what? It's now a thing to look at three teammates that can get over 1,000 yards, even though it hasn't happened in 12 years. 2008 Cardinals, they made it to the Super Bowl that year, by the way. Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden, and Steve Preston, each over 1,000. Preston barely over 1,000, but it happened thanks to our friends at NFL Research for pointing that out yesterday. So, what we're going to do today, we're going to draft the teams most likely to have three players, not necessarily receivers, with each in excess of 1,000, just three teammates who go over 1,000 yards from scrimmage this year. Can be running backs, can be receivers, can be tight ends, can be anybody. That's today's draft, and my understanding is Charean has a very easy and simple what color is blue type of trivia question for me today.
Absolutely, Mike. So here it goes. Who was the last receiver and the only one since 1960 to lead the league in receiving yards with fewer than 1,000?
It's got to be Drew Pearson. It's got to be Drew
Pearson. What year was it?
Probably 1975.
Yeah, it was 1977. He had 870 yards. The only time since 1960 that's happened. Very good. That was what color is blue.
Yeah, well, no, because I knew it was going to be silver and blue, crammed up my football memories from 1975. And let's have a point of clarification here, because I mentioned 1,000 yards from scrimmage. For running backs, are we doing 1,000 yards combined from scrimmage, or it has to be 1,000 yards rushing or 1,000 yards receiving for the running back?
Yes.
Okay, 1,000 yards, either
rushing.
or, rushing or receiving. So not from scrimmage. All right, well, look, I'm going to pick the trio that's already done it. Right? They did it with a lesser head coach than what they have now. They did it with Freddie Kitchens, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Nick Chubb. Last year, all three had over 1,000. Beckham and Landry were banged up all year long. They're healthy now. Of course, everybody's healthy now for the most part. But if they did it last year, there's no reason to think they can't do it again this year. So give me the Browns, Beckham, Landry, and Chubb.
The only reason I do have them as one of my first or second picks, and the only reason I say that they won't do it this year is because they have more weapons than they had last year. They have Austin Hooper. They have Kareem Hunt for a full season. So this might be a team that has too many weapons where they spread it out too much, where ODB commands the ball, demands the ball, and they have to pass it to him. But I do think Cleveland is right there simply because they did do it last year. I think you start by looking at the teams that had the highest offenses last season, the most yards, and that's Dallas, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, those types of teams. Cowboys led the league in offense with just under 7,000 yards, so we're talking almost half their offense. And they did it last year, too. They had Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup, and this year they have CeeDee Lamb, and I guess that's the only thing you worry about them not getting it is they have too many weapons, but they did it last year. I think they'll do it again this year. I think they'll put up a lot of yards and contend for having the most yards in the NFL this season.
I'm stunned that you would pick the Dallas Cowboys trio, although that would have been my other first pick. I almost thought about taking them just so you couldn't. But, yes, when you look at – and they could actually have four. Amari Cooper recently said he and Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb could each have over 1,000 yards receiving. And I think it's a given that unless he's injured, Ezekiel Elliott's going to get 1,000 yards rushing. All right. Now it gets a little more challenging. It's not necessarily out on a limb. I am going to wager that given the decision by Damian Williams to opt out in Kansas City, that's going to guarantee Clyde Edwards-Helaire delivers on the promise that made him the only first-round running back this year, gets 1,000 rushing yards, although with Andy Reid, you never quite know. You may not get the ball enough times to get 1,000 rushing yards. But Edwards-Helaire, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins in Kansas City would be my next pick because I think for Hill and now with Watkins, the injury bug is there, but he's in a contract year. He's got the motivation. Edwards-Helaire, I think, is going to get his 1,000. Hill's just going to show up and get his 1,000. Injury, whatever, he's still going to be fine. Well, I'd go. With a tight end, I'm reluctant to say 1,000 yards receiving. I'm just reluctant to do that because it's not nearly as. I know it's just not easy as it is with receivers, though. I'm gonna go Watkins, Hill, and Edwards-Helaire. And if Kelsey does it too, then it's just icing on the cake.
Okay. I'm going to go with the team that ranked second in offense last season, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. And you may give me a little asterisk here because one of those guys who went over 1,000 yards last year was Lamar Jackson in rushing, and he may or may not do that again this year. And, I think they've got enough weapons with Mark Ingram and Mark Edwards and Hollywood Brown and Lamar maybe rushing for over 1,000 again, that they're able to do it. So if I'm going to pick three of those, I'm going to say Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson, since they're built around the run. And I know they have J.K. Dobbins this year too, and Devin Duvernay and all that. But I'm going to go Hollywood Brown, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Ingram go over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I would not be confident that anybody in that offense is going to have 1,000 yards receiving. But if anybody does it, it's Hollywood Brown, and they're very excited about how healthy he is this year. Last year he had a big impact, even though he was still recovering from that foot problem that really, it helped the Ravens get him where they got him because it hurt his draft stock because he couldn't do anything prior to the 2019 draft, and it ended up working out very well for the Ravens. All right, boy, I can go a lot of different directions here. I'm very tempted to go Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, but with a rookie receiver, you never know what a rookie receiver is going to do. I'm going to play a little safer and say Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Emmanuel Sanders with the New Orleans Saints. I know with Kamara, the idea of 1,000 yards rushing is probably a bit of a stretch, but he's in a contract year. And I feel like they're going to get the most out of him in this contract year, unless he gets a new contract before the season starts. But I feel like they really want to unleash this guy. He wasn't healthy last year, and he still had a fairly solid season when you combine rushing and receiving. But I feel like this Saints offense this year, the last time they're getting the band together with Drew Brees, Sean Payton's going to have them dialed up, and they're going to generate some big numbers. And I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to make a huge difference, and everybody's going to be trying to stop Michael Thomas, and they're ultimately not going to be able to stop him. They can slow him down. They're not going to be able to stop him. So I'll take those three guys.
Boy, it's tough for this last pick, as you said. There's a lot of different directions you can go. I even had some teams that maybe you wouldn't quickly think of, like the Raiders. I think they've got a chance to do it. The 49ers obviously have a chance to do it. Atlanta has a chance to do it. But I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. And we didn't even talk about the Cardinals, who were the last team to do it and who were openly talking about doing it. But Larry Fitzgerald hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2017, so I'm not sure he's capable of quite getting there this year. But I'm going to go with the Buccaneers simply because they were so good last year on offense, and I just think adding Brady to that and Rob Gronkowski creates more of that. Now, I don't think they're going to have a rush for 1,000 yards, but I'm going to go with Gronk, Evans, and Godwin to get over 1,000 yards. Wow. Two of those guys did it last year. Gronk hasn't had one, I understand, in a long time. He had 682 the last time he played, but I think this is a team capable of having three with 1,000 yards.
See, I think what they're going to do with Gronk is they're going to ease him in, and they're going to have O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate as the main two tight ends early in the year, and maybe trade one of them at the deadline and unleash Gronk the back half of the season. Because, in 2018, his last season in the NFL, we had kind of forgotten about him because he wasn't performing at the level we were used to. But you know what that meant? That meant he was healthy for the playoff push. And I think that's part of the understanding they have in Tampa Bay. Because when they first acquired him in a trade with the Patriots, I thought O.J. Howard's out. And then I thought, you know what? Maybe he's not out. Maybe Gronk is a guy who comes along more slowly. So I think he's going to have a hard time getting to 1,000. I also had Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson. And I love Teddy Bridgewater. I can't get myself to the point where I can project a pair of 1,000-yard receivers in that Carolina offense. I don't know enough about that Carolina offense at this point with Joe Brady running it, but DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are both capable, and we know Christian McCaffrey is going to be a given. Does it count if McCaffrey goes 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving? Does that count as two? And only needs one more?
I think you just get one for that.
All right.
49ers look pretty good, too.
I worry about the 49ers, though, because it's who's going to have 1,000 yards rushing for the 49ers? Who's going to do it? You never know who's going to get the hot hand. Is it going to be Jerick McKinnon?
But yeah, that's
they've had Shereen. They've had Jerick McKinnon in mothballs. I mean, he's been injured, but he hasn't played at all in 2 years. They gave him a big contract. If he's healthy, they talk about the Raheem Mostert contract, and he got all sorts of incentives. He may not have a chance to earn them because of Jerick McKinnon if it finally takes off. So I think with the 49ers, it's going to be one of those things where after the fact we can look back and say, hey, look, they had 2 or 3 guys that had over 1,000 yards, but going into the season, I would not even begin to want to try to guess at who the 3 are going to be, because with that team, you just never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had one last year, which was George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel and Raheem Mostert came close, 800 and 700 yards respectively. So they were close, but they didn't even do it last year. They didn't even have 2 guys last year with that.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.